Amara Collins had planned weddings on 3 continents for people with last names that opened doors and bank accounts that closed mouths. She knew what love looked like when it was real. She knew what it looked like when it was a transaction. This engagement party was not love. The ballroom at the Haejin Grand glittered like a threat. Crystal chandeliers, mirrored columns, champagne that cost more than most people's rent. A string quartet played something elegant enough to disguise the tension in the air. Amara stood near the staff corridor, tablet in hand, eyes scanning the room like a general surveying a battlefield. Wedding planning was 90% logistics and 10% crisis management, and tonight felt like a crisis waiting for permission. At the center of the room stood Kang Ji-Hoon. Everyone called him a businessman. Everyone knew better. He wore a black suit cut so perfectly it made his stillness look deliberate. His posture never slouched. His expression never softened. He didn't need to raise his voice to be obeyed. The air around him did that work for him. Beside him, Seo Ara smiled like porcelain. She was beautiful in the way dangerous things often were. Too polished, too controlled, eyes sharp enough to slice. Her hand rested lightly on Ji-Hoon's arm, performing devotion for cameras and witnesses. Amara had met Ara twice. That was enough. The first time, Ara had looked Amara up and down and asked, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "Do you have experience with families like ours?" Amara had returned the smile. "I have experience with people who think their money makes them untouchable." Ara's smile had tightened. The second time, Ara had tried to bribe Amara, subtly, politely, to adjust the guest list and rearrange the seating chart for maximum harmony. What she'd actually wanted was simple: create blind spots. Put certain men far from certain men. Place a prosecutor near a minister. Seat a journalist where she could hear a whisper that would become a headline. Amara hadn't taken the bribe, but she'd kept the information. Because what Amara had overheard in the private suite an hour ago wasn't just a scandal, it was a plan. Ara was cheating. Not quietly, not carelessly, strategically. Amara had been checking floral placements when she heard Ara's voice through the half-closed door of the VIP lounge. "Stop being dramatic," Ara had said, amused. "Of course I need him to marry me first, then it's clean." A man's voice, lower, tense. "This is risky." "It's inevitable," Ara replied. "He thinks he owns everything. I'm simply proving he doesn't." A pause. "And the evidence?" the man asked. Ara laughed softly. "Already planted. Once we're married, I testify that I found it." Betrayed fiancé. Cooperative witness. He goes down. I walk away with half his legitimate assets and all his enemies fighting over the rest. Amara's blood had gone cold. She'd recognized the man's voice from earlier introductions. Prosecutor Han. Assigned to financial oversight cases. The kind of man who smiled too politely at criminals and too calmly at journalists. Amara didn't hear the rest. She didn't need to. She had minutes, maybe less, before something went live, before a warrant surfaced, before Ji-Hoon became a headline and a target and a corpse in the making. Amara scanned the ballroom again. Ji-Hoon's second, Dae-hyun, stood near the edge of the room, eyes moving like he was tracking threats. He was the kind of man who would solve problems efficiently. But Ara's plan wasn't a gun to the head. It was a trap built out of optics. Amara's mind ran through options. Confront Ara? She'd deny, accelerate, spin it as jealousy. Go to Ji-Hoon privately? He might not believe her. Or worse, he might believe her, and confront Ara in a way that let her trigger the plan early. Amara needed something messy enough to force a pause. A disruption so public Ara couldn't quietly continue. Her gaze landed on the cameras clustered near the stage. On the journalists pretending they weren't listening. On the minister's wife who loved a scandal more than dessert. Amara made her choice. She walked toward the center of the room. People tried to stop her. An assistant, a hotel manager, but her voice was calm and final. I'm with the bride. No one argued with the bride. Amara reached Ji-Hoon in 3 steps. Up close, he was worse. Not because he was handsome, though he was. The sharp jaw, disciplined hair, eyes like dark glass. Worse because his stillness felt like a wall, like nothing could reach him. Amara stopped directly in front of him. Mr. Kang, she said quietly. We need to speak. Ara's nails tightened on Ji-Hoon's arm. Amara, this is not the time. Amara didn't look at her. Ji-Hoon's gaze lowered to Amara. This isn't the time. Yes, Amara replied, voice steady, heart banging like a warning. It is. She felt the room noticing, the cameras shifting, the attention gathering like a storm cloud. Ara leaned forward, whispering to Ji-Hoon with a smile for the cameras. Control your staff. Amara's pulse spiked. She could feel the moment slipping, so she rose on her toes and kissed Kang Ji-Hoon. Not soft, not tentative. A kiss that didn't ask permission because there wasn't time. The ballroom froze. The quartet faltered. Somewhere, a champagne glass clinked too loudly. Ji-Hoon didn't respond. He didn't push her away either. He went utterly still, like his body couldn't decide whether this was an insult or an attack. Amara broke the kiss and leaned in close enough that only he could hear. She's cheating, she whispered, voice barely moving. Prosecutor Han. She's setting you up. Evidence, testimony, the whole thing. If you confront her quietly, she'll trigger it. You need to end this publicly. Right now. Ji-Hoon's breath changed. Just once. Ara's sharp inhale beside them wasn't shock. It was fury. Amara stepped back, and the ballroom erupted. Ara's smile shattered. What the hell is this? Ji-Hoon's gaze stayed on Amara, measuring, calculating, reading her like a dossier. Dae-hyun was already moving. Not fast, not frantic. Controlled, like the building belonged to him. Ara grabbed Ji-Hoon's sleeve. Ji-Hoon, this is humiliating. Ji-Hoon's voice was calm enough to terrify. Release me, he said. Ara froze, startled. Ji-Hoon looked toward the stage, toward the cameras. Then he said clearly for everyone to hear. The engagement is over. Silence slammed down. Ara's face went white hot. You can't, I can, Ji-Hoon replied, still calm. And I just did. He glanced at Dae-hyun. A single nod. The doors closed. The cameras were escorted out. Politely, firmly. And Amara realized, too late, that she hadn't just disrupted a party. She'd stepped into a war. The private lounge overlooking Seoul was quieter than the ballroom, but more dangerous. This room didn't glitter. It waited. Ji-Hoon stood near the window, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of untouched whiskey. The city lights behind him made him look carved. From shadow. Dae-hyun stood by the door, expression unreadable. Amara stood with her tablet clutched against her chest like it could protect her from what she'd just done. You're either very brave, Ji-Hoon said, or very stupid. Amara swallowed. Both, possibly. Dae-hyun's mouth twitched like he might be amused, but he said nothing. Ji-Hoon turned his gaze fully on her. Your name? Amara Collins. His eyes narrowed slightly. Not Korean. I'm black, she said evenly. American. I live here. I work here. And if your fiancé gets what she wants, I won't be working anywhere. Why tell me? Ji-Hoon asked. Amara stared at him. Because I heard her. Because you were about to walk into a trap. And because... She stopped herself from saying the last part. Because he looked like a man who didn't deserve to be destroyed by a woman like Ara. Ji-Hoon's silence stretched. Then he said, Tell me exactly what you heard. Amara recounted it. Ara's voice, the prosecutor, the words. Planted evidence, betrayed fiancé. cooperative witness. She didn't embellish. She didn't dramatize. She stuck to facts because she had the sense that Ji-Hoon would punish exaggeration. When she finished, the room was still. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. Hyung-nim, I can pull Han's communications. Ji-Hoon didn't look away from Amara. Why the kiss? Amara exhaled slowly. Because you're Kang Ji-Hoon. His gaze sharpened. No offense, she added quickly, but men like you don't take warnings. You take control. If I tried to quietly pull you aside, you would have confronted her privately, and she would have accelerated the plan. I needed something public. A scandal, Ji-Hoon said. A pause, Amara corrected. A disruption big enough to force her to react before she can execute cleanly. Dae-hyun studied her like he was deciding whether she was a genius or a liability. Ji-Hoon set his whiskey down without drinking. You understand? He said softly, that you just humiliated Seoul in front of her father, the press, and my enemies. Amara lifted her chin. Yes. Do you understand what that makes you? Ji-Hoon asked. Amara's pulse hammered. A target. Ji-Hoon's eyes held hers, cold, intense, unreadable. Yes, he said. And you made yourself my problem? Amara blinked. I'm not asking you to. You kissed me, he interrupted, voice still calm. That is not something done without consequence. His gaze flicked briefly to her mouth, then back to her eyes. From this moment, he said, you are under my protection. Amara's stomach tightened. I don't need protection. Dae-hyun's voice was quiet, almost gentle. You do now. Amara's jaw clenched. I can leave Seoul. Ji-Hoon's expression didn't change. Not safely. Amara stared at him. You're going to lock me up? Ji-Hoon took one step closer, enough to make the air feel heavier. I'm not interested in imprisoning you, he said. I'm interested in keeping you alive. Amara's voice dropped. What do you want from me? Ji-Hoon's gaze stayed steady. I want the truth. Every piece of it. Dae-hyun's phone vibrated. He glanced down, then looked up at Ji-Hoon. Prosecutor Han is leaving the hotel, Dae-hyun said. Ara is with him. Amara's blood went cold. She's moving already. Ji-Hoon's eyes narrowed. Then we move faster. He looked at Dae-hyun. Handle it. Dae-hyun nodded once and disappeared through the door like a blade slipping into a sheath. Amara stared after him. What does handle it mean? Ji-Hoon turned back to her. It means he prevents. Tonight from becoming your funeral. Amara's breath caught. Ji-Hoon stepped closer again, lowering his voice. You did something reckless, he said. But not pointless. Amara swallowed. I didn't do it for you. Ji-Hoon's gaze held hers. You did it in front of everyone, he said. That matters. His phone buzzed. Another message, another update, but he ignored it. Instead, he said, Where are your things? Amara's eyebrows lifted. Excuse me? Where do you live? Ji-Hoon asked. Tonight you don't go back there. Amara's pulse spiked. No. Ji-Hoon's expression stayed calm. This isn't a negotiation. Amara stared at him. This man who ruled rooms with silence, who spoke like consequences were inevitable. And she realized the terrifying part. He wasn't threatening her. He was deciding. The penthouse wasn't decorated like a bachelor's fantasy. It was designed like a fortress pretending to be a home. Neutral tones, minimal clutter, soft lighting that didn't cast shadows in corners. Security was present but invisible. Quiet men in plain clothes, cameras disguised as smoke detectors, doors that locked with a whisper instead of a click. Amara stood in the entryway with her overnight bag and anger blooming under her ribs. This is kidnapping, she said flatly. Ji-Hoon removed his coat and draped it over a chair like he'd done it 1,000 times. No. He nodded toward the kitchen. Eat. I'm not hungry. You're stressed, he replied. People make stupid decisions when they're hungry and stressed. Eat. Amara stared at him. Do you always talk to women like this? Ji-Hoon's gaze flicked to her. Cool. Unreadable. Do you always kiss men you don't know in public? Amara's cheeks heated. I didn't. You did, he said calmly. Now eat. She should have thrown something at him. She should have stormed out. Instead, she walked to the kitchen because her body was trembling and she hated that he'd noticed. Later, when she sat at the dining table with a bowl of rice and soup she hadn't asked for, Ji-Hoon sat across from her with a laptop open. He didn't touch her. He didn't flirt. He worked. Amara watched him in silence, trying to reconcile the myth of Kang Ji-Hoon with the man in front of her. Why marry her? She asked finally. Ji-Hoon's hands paused on the keyboard. Peace, he said after a moment. That's not an answer. He looked up. It is. Her father controls certain legitimate pipelines, banks, ports, licenses. It was an alliance designed to keep my enemies from attacking those channels. Amara's gaze sharpened. So you plan to marry someone you didn't love? For stability? Ji-Hoon's expression didn't shift. Love is not a requirement for marriage. Amara's voice was quiet. That's sad. Something flickered in his eyes, too fast to name. Sadness is a luxury, he replied. Amara pushed her spoon around the bowl. What happens now? Ji-Hoon's jaw tightened. Now we confirm, then we dismantle. He stood and walked to the window, looking down at Seoul like it belonged to him, and he was tired of carrying it. You didn't bring me proof, he said. Only truth. Amara bristled. I heard what I heard. I believe you, he said, and the simplicity of it startled her. She blinked. You do? Ji-Hoon turned his head slightly. People lie to get close to me, but they don't lie like that. Amara's throat tightened unexpectedly. Ji-Hoon's phone buzzed. He checked it, face hardening. Dae-hyun. Han's phone extracted. Ara met him in Suite 31. Audio secured. No witnesses. Amara stared. Extracted? Ji-Hoon didn't answer directly. Dae-hyun handles problems. Amara's pulse spiked. Is Prosecutor Han alive? Ji-Hoon said, anticipating her fear. Terrified, but alive. She exhaled shakily. Ji-Hoon's gaze returned to her. Ara will react. Amara nodded. She'll paint me as a seductress, a social climber, a foreign opportunist. Ji-Hoon's mouth tightened slightly. Let her. Amara's eyebrows lifted. You don't care about public opinion? Ji-Hoon stepped closer, stopping just far enough to keep the air between them sharp. I care about leverage, he said, and right now, she thinks you're your own leverage. Amara swallowed. Ji-Hoon's voice lowered. But you're not. Amara's breath caught. What does that mean? It means, he said, gaze steady. She doesn't understand that when someone touches what I've decided to protect, I remove the hand. A chill slid down Amara's spine. You decided to protect me? She asked softly. Ji-Hoon's eyes held hers. You made yourself visible beside me. Amara's voice was bitter. I didn't mean to become your property. Ji-Hoon's expression tightened, an edge of something human, almost regretful. I didn't say property. He corrected quietly. I said protected. Amara stared at him, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. That night, in the guest room, Amara lay awake listening to the quiet hum of security systems. She told herself she hated him. She told herself she was trapped. But beneath it all, a different truth whispered through her chest. No one had ever moved this quickly to keep her alive, and that was dangerous. Cora's response came at dawn, not with bullets, with headlines. Amara woke to her phone vibrating nonstop, messages from clients, co-workers, acquaintances. Is this true? Are you safe? What did you do? Why would you ruin her engagement? Ji-Hoon entered the room without knocking, already holding a tablet. He set it on the bed. The headline screamed in Korean. Foreign wedding planner seduces heir's fiancé. Engagement shattered under it was a photo. Amara kissing Ji-Hoon, captured perfectly, like a weapon. Amara's stomach sank. She's fast. Ji-Hoon's eyes were cold. She's desperate. Amara scrolled. The article painted her as a hired temptress. It implied she'd been paid by rival families to sabotage the alliance. Her career, her entire business, was being set on fire in real time. Amara's hands trembled. This will destroy me. Ji-Hoon watched her carefully. It will inconvenience you. Amara snapped her gaze up. Inconvenience? His voice remained calm. If you survive, you rebuild. The words hit like a slap, then like a strange kind of comfort. Amara exhaled shakily. You talk like survival is guaranteed. Ji-Hoon's gaze held hers. With me, it is. Dae-hyun arrived mid-morning. He didn't look rushed, but his eyes were sharper than usual. Ara filed an emergency petition, he reported. She claims Mr. Kang assaulted her last night and threatened her family. Prosecutor Han has been called in as a supporting witness. Amara's blood went cold. She's doing it. Ji-Hoon's face didn't change. Good. Amara blinked. Good? Ji-Hoon turned slightly. Because now she has to lie publicly. Dae-hyun nodded. We have the audio. Amara stared. Audio of what? Dae-hyun's voice was flat. Ara and Han discussing evidence placement, timelines, the marriage. Amara's pulse raced. That's enough to destroy them. Ji-Hoon's gaze narrowed. Not yet. Amara frowned. Why not release it now? Ji-Hoon looked at her like she was intelligent but still learning his world. Because Ara's father will counterattack, he said. He will claim it's fabricated. He will claim you're involved. He will force an investigation into you. Amara's stomach twisted. So what's your plan? Ji-Hoon's voice was quiet, lethal. We let her overreach. Amara stared. And if she succeeds before then? Ji-Hoon's eyes flicked to her, steady and absolute. She won't. Later that day, Ji-Hoon dressed for the prosecutor's office. Black suit, crisp white shirt, tie like a blade. Amara stood in the doorway, throat tight. This is dangerous, she said. Ji-Hoon paused, looking at her with something unreadable. You should leave, he said quietly. Tonight. Dae-hyun can put you on a plane. Amara swallowed. And you? Ji-Hoon's jaw tightened. This is not your war. Amara stared at him. This man who had dragged her into danger, yes, but who now offered her an exit. It wasn't kindness. It was something else. It was responsibility. No, Amara said. Ji-Hoon's eyes sharpened. Amara. I'm not running, she interrupted, voice trembling but firm. If Ara wins, she'll still destroy me. If she loses, she'll try again. The only way I survive is if this ends. Ji-Hoon stepped closer, gaze intense. You don't understand what you're choosing. Amara lifted her chin. Then explain. His voice dropped low. If you stand beside me, you become a message. Amara's breath caught. To who? Ji-Hoon's eyes held hers. To everyone. Silence crackled. Then Amara whispered, I can handle being talked about. Ji-Hoon's gaze flicked to her mouth. You cannot handle what happens when someone tries to use you, he said quietly. Amara's voice softened. Then don't let them. For a second, something in Ji-Hoon's face shifted, an emotion he kept buried. Then he reached out. Not to grab her, but to touch her cheek with the back of his fingers, barely there. Reckless, he murmured. Amara swallowed. Yes. Ji-Hoon's voice went rougher. Why did you really kiss me? Amara's heart hammered. She could have lied. She could have said strategy again. Instead, she told the truth she hadn't meant to say aloud. "Because you look like a man being led to slaughter with a smile," she whispered. And I couldn't stand it. Ji-Hoon stared at her, something dark and hungry behind his control. Then he kissed her. Not the public kiss. This one was slow, deliberate, personal. An agreement made without words. When he pulled back, his forehead rested briefly against hers. "I will come back," he said. Amara closed her eyes. "You better." Ji-Hoon left, and Amara stood in the doorway, realizing she'd just kissed a man who could ruin her, and wanted him to return anyway. Ara's attack came through the system. Subpoenas, accusations, a public narrative. Ji-Hoon sat in a sterile office while prosecutors questioned him with smiles too sharp. Amara wasn't there, but her presence haunted the room anyway, because the press had made her the story. Dae-hyun handled the external pressure, suppressing false witness statements, locking down financial trails, quietly reminding key allies where their loyalties belonged. But Amara handled what no one expected. She treated the situation like a wedding, a timeline, a sequence of events, a chain of decisions that could be reversed. She went back through every meeting Ara had demanded, the guest list manipulations, the seating chart adjustments, the vendor changes. She pulled records. She found the mistakes Ara had tried to force into the plan. Then she found the real trap. A private dinner scheduled after the engagement announcement, a dinner Ara insisted be intimate. No staff, no planners, only select guests. Prosecutor Han, a journalist, a minister, 2 bank executives. Ara wasn't planning a marriage, she was planning a spectacle. Amara took that information to Dae-hyun. He listened without interrupting, eyes unreadable. When she finished, he asked, "Why are you telling me?" Amara's voice was quiet. "Because you're the one who gets things done." Dae-hyun studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Good." He made a call. Hours later, Ji-Hoon returned to the penthouse, expression controlled but the tension in his shoulders different. "You were right," he said. Amara's throat tightened. "About what?" "Ara overreached," Ji-Hoon replied. "She put her lie in writing." He held up a document, an official statement Ara had filed, describing threats Ji-Hoon allegedly made in a room that, according to hotel logs, she had never entered. Amara exhaled. "So she's caught." Ji-Hoon's gaze held hers. "Not yet, but soon." Amara hesitated. "What happens to her?" Ji-Hoon's face stayed calm. "She loses." Amara swallowed. "And me?" Ji-Hoon's gaze softened by a fraction. "You rebuild." Then he surprised her. "You will not lose your career," he said. Amara blinked. "How can you promise that?" Ji-Hoon stepped closer. "Because she attacked you with lies." A pause. "And I don't allow people to steal what belongs to me." Amara's heart skipped. "I told you, I'm not your property." Ji-Hoon's gaze stayed steady. "I know." His voice lowered. "That's why it matters that I choose you anyway." Amara's breath caught. The next morning, the audio dropped. Not leaked. Presented. A press conference, carefully arranged, legally airtight, where Ji-Hoon's attorney played a recording of Ara and prosecutor Han discussing planted evidence and post-marriage testimony. Ara's face on the live stream was a mask cracking in real time. Prosecutor Han resigned by lunch. Ara's father attempted damage control, but the narrative had shifted. Ara wasn't the victim. She was the architect. The authorities opened an investigation into evidence tampering. Ara's allies vanished, and by nightfall, the underworld whispered something new. Seo Ara tried to destroy Kang Ji-Hoon, and failed. The first time Ji-Hoon slept a full night after the scandal, it wasn't because the danger was gone. It was because Amara was in the next room. Presence, he learned, could be its own kind of safety. Amara didn't forgive him for trapping her in his world. Ji-Hoon didn't ask her to. Instead, he did something she didn't expect. He gave her control back. He arranged a public statement, short, clean, clarifying that Amara had been contracted for event logistics only and that any insinuation of misconduct was defamatory and would be pursued legally. He offered to bankroll her business. Amara refused. He didn't argue. He simply ensured her vendor connections were restored, quietly, through intermediaries who owed him favors. Weeks passed. The city moved on to the next scandal. Ara disappeared from society. Some claimed she'd fled. Some claimed her father had hidden her. Some whispered darker endings. Amara didn't ask. She had learned. In Ji-Hoon's world, curiosity could be dangerous. One evening, Amara stood on the penthouse balcony, looking at Seoul's lights like they were a sea she'd almost drowned in. Ji-Hoon stepped beside her, silent. "You can go," he said quietly. "If you want." Amara turned. "Do you want me to go?" Ji-Hoon's gaze held hers, rare honesty in his eyes. "No," he admitted. "But I want you to choose it." Amara's throat tightened. "You're still going to marry for alliances?" she asked softly. Ji-Hoon's mouth tightened. "I was raised to believe love is a liability." Amara nodded slowly. "And now?" Ji-Hoon's gaze drifted to her lips, then back to her eyes. "Now," he said, "I think love is a weapon, if you let the wrong person hold it." Amara's voice was quiet. "And I'm the wrong person?" Ji-Hoon's eyes softened, a fraction. "No," he said. "You're the first person who used proximity to protect me instead of control me." Amara swallowed. "I kissed you to stop a timeline. And you stayed," he replied. "When you could have run." Silence stretched. Then Amara exhaled, the truth rising up despite her fear. "I didn't expect you to be this," she admitted. Ji-Hoon's brow lifted slightly. "This?" "A man who listens," Amara said, voice shaky. "A man who doesn't force what he wants." Ji-Hoon's gaze held hers. "I want you." Amara's heart hammered. Ji-Hoon continued, voice low. "But I will not take you like a conquest." Amara stared at him. Then she stepped closer. "You're still terrifying," she whispered. Ji-Hoon's mouth curved faintly. "I know." Amara's hand rested lightly on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath all that control. "But you're trying," she said. Ji-Hoon's eyes darkened. "Yes." Amara swallowed. "Then I'll try too," she whispered. Ji-Hoon didn't kiss her immediately. He waited, just long enough to give her space to change her mind. She didn't. So he kissed her like a vow. Months later, Amara planned a wedding she had never expected to plan. Not in the Hagen Grand. Not with cameras. Not with socialites pretending to smile. A small ceremony on a quiet coastline outside Seoul, where the wind smelled like salt and beginnings. Dae-hyun stood nearby, not as a guard, but as family. Ji-Hoon's mother, stronger now, recovering, eyes bright with stubborn life, held Amara's hands and said something in Korean that made Amara blink back tears even without understanding every word. Ji-Hoon watched Amara like she was the only truth left in his world. When it came time for vows, he didn't speak like a gangster. He spoke like a man who had almost lost the only person who ever saved him without asking for payment. "I built my life around control," Ji-Hoon said quietly. "I believed love would make me weak." He looked at Amara, eyes steady. "But you kissed me in front of my enemies," he continued, "and you did it to protect me, not to claim me." Amara's throat tightened. Ji-Hoon's voice went rough. "So I will spend my life proving I deserve the kind of love that risks itself for truth." Amara exhaled shakily. "My job is to plan perfect moments," she said softly. "But you were never supposed to be part of my plan." A small smile trembled on her mouth. And yet, she continued, you showed me what it feels like to be protected without being owned. She squeezed his hands. So I choose you, she whispered. Not your empire, not your name. You. Ji-Hoon's breath left him like a confession. When they kissed, it wasn't a disruption, it was a beginning. And somewhere behind them, the waves kept moving, constant, inevitable, like the world would continue trying to test them. But this time, Ji-Hoon didn't believe in distance as protection. He believed in staying. You're listening to Obsidian Audio Vault. Subscribe. It gets interesting here.